namaste and welcome to yet another session of our Class 10 ICSE Biology series. I'm Ambika, Master Teacher of Biology right here at Vedantu. How does it feel, guys? It's been a few days since we launched the ICSE series, and in biology, we are already done with two major chapters, which are cell cycle and cell division, and secondly, genetics, the basic fundamentals. And based on requests from all of you, from many of you children, I have decided to take up chapters from the unit Human Physiology, although that comes a little later according to your textbook and according to your syllabus. Of course, it's not possible to cater to each and everyone's need. I just had to take and go with the majority of whatever a good majority of you wanted. And hence, today we shall be starting with the very first human physiology chapter in your syllabus, which is the circulatory system. Of course, you have been hearing a lot about the circulatory system from your lower grades. So I'm sure you have a basic understanding of what it is, what are life processes in general, what is the circulatory system, what does it do, and all of those things. You've learned some of the life processes or some of the physiology systems in your lower grades like 8th or 9th. This year you have a few remaining systems to focus on, and the first one will be the circulatory system. As you know, the circulatory system is certainly one of the most important processes in your body, right? Well, that said, life processes in general are all the processes in your body that are required to sustain your life, right? So that would include digestion, respiration, circulation, excretion, and of course your nervous system and endocrine glands. Reproduction, on the contrary, is required for the survival or continuation of a species. It's not required for the survival of an individual organism. Okay, so reproduction is a totally separate unit. We don't consider that as a life process. But yes, the circulatory system, respiratory system, your digestive system, excretion, all of these are interconnected. If one of these systems fails, everything else fails. And perhaps it can be a good topic of debate about which organ of your body or which life process in your body is the most important one or the most vital one. Because I'm not sure if we can ever come up to a clear-cut answer to that. Anyway, that can go on and on if we start talking about it. Let us start with the most important or the most hard-working organ of our body, which is none other than the human heart. Okay, so I'm sure you know some basics about the human heart and about the circulatory system in general from what you have learned in your lower grades. Let's just answer a couple of questions very quickly to get started. Okay, the very first question that I want to ask you is this: how many chambers does the human heart have? I thought 10 standard is probably way too mature or way too high a level for me to start teaching this, which is why I thought it's better to get the answer from you. Tell me, how many chambers does the human heart have? Yes, absolutely right. The answer is 4. We have 4 chambers in our heart. What about other organisms, other groups of organisms? Now, if you look at how the animal kingdom has evolved, among the vertebrates, okay, among the jawed vertebrates, fishes are the lowest class and they have a 2-chambered heart. This is followed by amphibians, which have a 3-chambered heart, followed by reptiles, which have 3 chambers, including a partially divided ventricle. So basically, most reptiles have a 3.5-chambered heart. The exception comes in the case of crocodiles among reptiles, who are perhaps the only reptiles known to have a 4-chambered heart. After the reptiles come the birds and then the mammals. Both the classes, aves and mammalia, both the classes have a well-developed 4-chambered heart, right? The next one. Which of these are human blood components? You could pick 1 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them. 3 would mean option D is right, all of these. You could pick whatever you think is right. Yes, All of these would be the correct answer. RBCs, or your red blood cells, are also known as erythrocytes. White blood cells are also called leukocytes, and platelets are also called thrombocytes. So what do RBCs do? RBCs basically contain hemoglobin, which help in oxygen transport across your body, right? And then WBCs are of different types again, and they basically help in, destroying foreign bodies and providing immunity to your body, okay? And platelets or thrombocytes are involved in blood clotting. Okay, remember we spoke about hemophilia in the chapter genetics. In people who are affected by the disorder hemophilia, according to the genetic information that's contained in their genes or DNA, their platelets or blood clotting mechanism doesn't function normally, which is why there is uncontrolled bleeding in the case of hemophilic people. Okay, so platelets are thus very, very vital and important cells as far as your body, as far as your circulatory system is concerned. And all of these three are equally important parts of your blood or parts of your circulatory system. Okay? Okay, and now I have one more question to ask you. Human beings have an open circulatory system or a closed circulatory system? Yes, human beings are an example for organisms having a closed circulatory system. Now, if you look at this image, okay, have a close look at it and you would know that there are basically two types of circulatory systems in the animal kingdom. Open and closed. What is it based on? Open circulatory systems are those which are present in insects like cockroaches and most insects, most invertebrates in fact, have an open circulatory system. Why is it called open? It's because the blood is pumped by the heart and then whatever carries it to the body cavity just leaves it freely into open spaces of the body cavity, okay? Which is why it's not closed here. On the contrary, closed circulatory system, as you can see in this picture, they are closed. The blood flow is always confined to blood vessels. Blood in our body or in any organism that has a closed circulatory system, blood does not flow freely within body spaces. Blood flow is always confined within blood vessels, okay? The heart pumps it and it's carried by the various blood vessels to the different parts of the body, and then by diffusion it enters them, and then through the blood vessels, the unwanted blood comes back to the heart and so on. We will look at more details of all of these very soon, but the example that I have shown here for open circulatory system is cockroach or arthropods in general. And here, the example that I have shown is that of earthworm. Earthworm, although it's an invertebrate, earthworm belongs to the phylum Annelida, and Annelida is perhaps one of those exceptions in the invertebrate group with a closed circulatory system. Human beings also have a closed circulatory system, and so do most higher animals. Okay, so let us get going and start talking about the heart. Yes, isn't that beautiful? This is why I said the heart is perhaps the most hard-working organ of your body. Imagine your brain gets rest. You give your brain enough rest, hopefully, when you sleep at night. And you give your hands, your legs, the other parts of your body rest. You give your digestive system a lot of rest during your sleep hours at night. But imagine the case of your heart and, of course, your lungs. These are organs which cannot afford to rest because the lungs, of course, has to take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide all the time. Involuntarily, they keep functioning. We don't even have to think about them. They are all self-motivated. The lungs, heart, and all of these organs are self-motivated. You just don't have to monitor what they are doing. They continue to do their job beautifully. Until, of course, something unfortunate happens and eventually they have to give up and finally stop working. Okay, so let us look at this beautiful organ what are the parts of it. In today's session, I intend to talk only about the structure of the heart. Of course, the functioning of the heart is equally important, which we will continue in the next class. But as such, I know as a student, I have also struggled to remember and retain all the names of the chambers, the blood vessels, and all of these things in my memory. And then to make things worse, what flows where to where, and all of that happens. So I thought it would be better to break it down for you. At least in our sessions, we can have 2 short sessions about the human heart. Today, as I said, we'll only be discussing the structure of the human heart. We look at how it works, how conduction happens, and all of that in our next session. But because this is extremely important for you to understand that, if you stay with me till the end of this session, you will not forget this for the rest of your life. Those marks will be yours. The moment you sit down to read this topic from your textbook, I'm sure all of these that we are discussing in today's session will come to your mind, and you just need to read through once to revise, okay? So that makes your job much easier. So forget about all other distractions. Stay with me for the next 15-20 minutes. Okay, let's get started. First of all, where is the human heart located? Of course, you are all smarties. You are all 15-year-olds. All of you know where the human heart is. Yes, as you can see, you find it in the thoracic cavity. The thoracic cavity is the part of our body that is above the diaphragm. And what is below that is the abdominal cavity. So in the thoracic cavity, you have the rib cage within which the lungs are protected. Of course, in this picture, I haven't shown the lungs because that would have masked the heart if I had put it here. So the heart is in fact found between the lobes of the lungs, the left and right lobes of the lungs, and hence protected by the rib cage. Right? It's slightly tilted towards the left of the body, as you can see. And how big is it? You must have heard this from your primary school, right? Your teachers must have told you it's roughly as big as a closed human fist. Okay? Roughly that is the size of a human heart. And now, what is this? Let's start from the outside. As you can see, just like any other organ of your body, it needs protection. Your heart needs extra protection. Of course, it is one of the most vital organs of your body, so it needs a lot of additional protection, right? So what is it that protects it? Of course, the rib cage protects it, but that's not enough. The heart is very, very delicate. So it has a covering right around it, a covering protecting it, which is called the pericardium. Now, why do you think I have shown this here? This is just a thermocol box. It's nothing to do with the heart, just so that you could relate to the function of the pericardium to the function of a thermocol box, like you order something from Amazon or Flipkart or any other online shopping website, and then you get if you order something very, very delicate, you get it delivered in something like this. This is so that it doesn't break. It doesn't break easily, especially if it's some glass object or some easily breakage prone item that you have ordered. They normally deliver it to you in a well protected box like this. Similarly, our heart has a covering called the pericardium. Now, to remember this word, peri, the word peri means around or surrounding. Remember, in mathematics, you must have learned perimeter. Perimeter is all about the outer length, okay? We are not talking about the area enclosed in it. The surrounding is what we calculate when you are asked to calculate perimeter. So peri is around or surrounding. And cardium, yes, a cardiologist. You must have heard of the word cardiologist, a specialist, a physician who is specialized in dealing with the heart and its associated diseases. So cardio has got anything to do with the heart. Okay. Pericardium, surrounding the heart. Okay. Now, this pericardium, like you can see, the layer has been peeled out for you in this particular image to make things a little easier for you. It's in fact a two-layered membrane, okay? And in between these two layers, a fluid is filled, which is called the pericardial fluid. Okay? Now, why is it important? Why do we need the pericardium? Why do we need the pericardial fluid? Let us look at that. Of course, the pericardial fluid would protect the heart from mechanical injury and shock. Like I told you, the thermocol box would protect a delicate item that's packed inside it from just if somebody throws it away aside carelessly or something like that, it would still protect what's inside it, right? It's something like that. And then, of course, it keeps the heart moist for its proper functioning. And it provides lubrication and reduces friction during heartbeat. Even if you are asked to write the functions of the pericardium, you could write these. You could say the pericardium is a two-layered membrane that protects the heart. Between these two layers is the pericardial fluid, and this structure together performs these functions. Right, children? Keep this in mind, important from an examination perspective. Okay? Now, talking about the chambers of the heart, we have seen what it looks like outside. It's got a layer, a pericardial membrane surrounding it or protecting it. But let's go one step deeper. We are looking at the four chambers of the heart. All of you have told me it's a four-chambered heart in the case of humans, of course. Birds and all mammals have a four-chambered heart like us. Okay, so what are these chambers? We have the left atrium, the right atrium, the left ventricle, and the right ventricle. Okay, for the time being, forget the tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. We will be discussing that very soon in the next few minutes. For now, just look at the chambers of the heart. The left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, and the right ventricle. The atrium is singular and atria would be plural. Atria are also called auricles. Okay? The right atrium or the right auricle. And the left atrium or the left auricle. Okay, so we have two upper atria and two lower ventricles. Just by a glance at this image, you would understand that the atria compared to the ventricles are thinner walled. Ventricles are much thicker walled as compared to the atria. Right? Of course, there's a reason for this, which you will understand by the end of this session. Okay, but for now, just understand atria are thin-walled and ventricles are thicker-walled. And as you can see, there is a partition that separates the right ventricle and the left ventricle and the right atrium and the left atrium. You can call it the interventricular septum, meaning a septum means a partition. Interventricular septum would be between ventricles, a partition between the ventricles. And this is your interatrial or interauricular septum. It is because of these septa is plural, it is because of these septa that we have four completely divided chambers in the heart. Okay, children? Understand this very clearly. Now, one more very basic thing children generally go wrong with when they draw the structure of the heart or write answers related to the heart. I'm telling you this from my own experience. Now, my teachers who taught me the structure of the heart never told me, or even myself as a child, I never thought why we are marking this as left and this as right. Okay? Remember this, if I am standing in front of this heart, and if this was just a magnified version of my heart that's projected here, this would be left and this would be right, correct? This is my right side and this is my left side. And why is it that we have to learn to draw it like this? What would go wrong if we always learned the heart structure the other way? Think about it. Why is it, or who are the most important people who need to know the structure of the heart? I think, in my opinion, of course, for all of us, it's important, but the most important people who have to be learning this would be cardiac surgeons, heart specialists. Imagine a cardiac surgeon who's performing a heart surgery. When he's performing a surgery, he is looking at the patient like this. The patient is lying down in front of him, right? And if the surgeon gets confused between left and right, no, in my textbook, this was right and this was left. Imagine if that's his mindset when he performs the surgery, what would be the plight of the patient? Yes, understandable, right? So always from the basics, when we learn the structure of the heart, imagine that this is how you have to think about it. A person is standing in front of you and you are facing that person. It is that person's heart that you are looking at. So the right and the left. Get this very, very clear in your head right now. There is no point continuing if you don't get this basic right. Okay? The right side and the left side. A very simple thing, yet a very, very critical thing about the heart. Okay, children? Now let's go on to the blood vessels. As you know, just like any other organism with a closed circulatory system, human beings also have a heart associated with an extensive network of blood vessels. There are 3 major types of blood vessels that we human beings have. What are they? As you can see, it's the arteries, which form one type, the veins, and the capillaries. What do they do? Arteries always carry blood away from the heart. Now imagine in this diagram, imagine that the heart is located somewhere there. Okay? It carries blood away from the heart and transports it to the rest of the body parts. A vein, on the contrary, does exactly the opposite. It collects blood from different parts of the body and brings it to the heart. What do the capillaries do? Capillaries act something like a connection between these two. Arteries branch and further branch into very, very tiny, thin-walled blood vessels, which we call capillaries. Capillaries, in fact, form the connection between the arteries and the veins. And of course, they are very, very thin-walled so that they are in touch with the cells of the body. So what happens is, because the capillaries are directly in touch with the tissues and cells of the body, and the capillaries are thin-walled, diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide can easily happen between the cells and the inside of the capillary, right? So imagine it to be like that, and then after that exchange happens, depending on whether it's oxygenated or deoxygenated blood, it goes into the veins or the arteries bring it respectively. Don't worry about that part. I'm sure some of you would have an idea about this already. Those of you who are confused, hold on for a bit. We will be discussing this well in detail in our next session when we talk about the working of the heart or how double circulation functions. For the time being, just understand arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins carry blood towards the heart. This rule never changes. Now, how do you remember this? Children normally get confused. Is it the vein or the artery that carries blood away from the heart? It is always the artery. Imagine or remember that A in artery stands for away. Okay? And of course, the veins will be the opposite of this. Veins would be towards the heart. Capillaries, somewhere connecting the two after they branch and further branch at the tissue or cellular level. Okay? Now, what happens next? We have seen the chambers of the heart. We have looked at the major blood vessels. But more importantly, we need to know slightly finer details. In general, blood vessels are of 3 types, which is what we saw, but we need to know specific names of some of the blood vessels, okay? The first one, this is about blood vessels which enter the heart, okay? The first one being the superior or the anterior vena cava. The superior or the anterior vena cava that you can see on top in this image. Yes? Okay, Secondly, the inferior or the posterior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava, also known as the posterior vena cava. This superior vena cava brings in blood from upper body parts to the heart. The inferior vena cava brings it from the lower body parts to the heart. Clear, children? The third one is coronary veins. Coronary veins, of course, in this view of the heart, you cannot see it, but just understand that the coronary veins carry deoxygenated blood from the muscles of the heart, muscles supporting the heart walls towards the heart. Okay, so from the heart walls is what coronary veins do. Pulmonary veins, again a very, very important one. Pulmonary vein. Yes, this is one of the pulmonary veins. In fact, there is a left pulmonary vein and the right pulmonary vein. But what do they do? The name has to tell you again. Pulmo or pulmonary is always something to do with the lungs. A pulmonologist is a doctor or a specialist who is concerned with respiratory or lung-related disorders. Right? So pulmonary veins always carry blood from the lungs to the heart. Okay? So we have seen 4 major blood vessels now which enter the heart. Of course, there are many more, but these are the 4 most important ones. Okay? The superior or the anterior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, the coronary veins, and the pulmonary veins. Now let's look at the blood vessels which leave the heart. Okay, it's similar to the other one in the sense we are talking about pulmonary arteries instead of pulmonary veins because it's away from the heart, right? So pulmonary artery, guess what they would do? Yes, if pulmonary veins carried blood from the lungs to the heart, pulmonary arteries are supposed to carry blood from the heart to the lungs, away from the heart, right? So that is what pulmonary artery does. Aorta is this huge blood vessel that you see here, the aorta. It's supposed to be the largest artery of the human heart. What does it do? It's because of the aorta that blood is pumped to the different parts of your body. So it's a very, very strong and a very, very large artery, the aorta. Remember the name. And the third one, coronary arteries. Again, like the coronary veins, these blood vessels are in touch with your heart muscles. So coronary arteries supply blood to the muscles of the heart. Okay? So pulmonary veins and pulmonary arteries, coronary veins and the coronary arteries, and the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava in the case of the veins, and aorta in the case of artery. Very clear, children? We have learned 7 major blood vessels as far as the human heart is concerned. Make sure you remember all of these names along with their respective functions. As in, what they do, like where they get blood from or where they pump blood to. Okay? Remember that. Very, very important. Now, going on to the next one. Now, we've spoken about the chambers of the heart. We've seen what blood vessels are. We've seen the major types of blood vessels. In addition to that, it's not just enough that we have chambers of the heart and vessels of the heart. We also need something called as the valves. What do valves do? Just like in a plumbing system, valves of your heart also prevent backflow of blood. Okay, why is this important? Say, for instance, blood is flowing from your artery, from your atrium to your ventricle, atria to your ventricles. What if there was no control system? It would spontaneously probably pump back into the atria without any reason, right? The reason it doesn't happen, the reason blood flows only in one direction is because of a well-defined valve system in your heart. And the most important valves in your heart are the pulmonary valve, okay? The pulmonary valve, which is present right here, where the pulmonary artery begins, okay? The aortic valve, as the name tells you, where the aorta would begin. The mitral valve, which is also called as the bicuspid valve. bicuspid valve. Okay, the mitral valve, which is present at the junction between the left atrium and the left ventricle, and the tricuspid valve present at the junction between the right atrium and the right ventricle. Okay, bicuspid on the left, tricuspid on the right. Okay, and bicuspid is also called the mitral valve. Okay, create some mnemonic if you're confused with that. Mitral, bicuspid, MB. Okay, and that is present on the left side. Tricuspid or the right atrioventricular valve is found on the right side. Now, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve are described as semi-lunar. So, they are also called semi-lunar pulmonary valve and semi-lunar aortic valve. Why do you think so? Well, it's just got something to do with the appearance. If you can see, both of them have this shape, related to the shape of the moon that you know about. Lunar. Lunar is anything to do with the moon. Right? Lunar eclipse, we know about all that. Semi-lunar is half moon. Because they are half moon shaped, we describe these two as semi-lunar. Okay, children? Semi-lunar pulmonary valve and semi-lunar aortic valve. Here again. Okay? So, we have learned 4 major valves of your heart. Aortic, pulmonary, tricuspid and bicuspid. Now, what are these structures that you can see here? They are called chordae tendineae. They are fibrous thread-like cords that you can see here. Why are they present? It's not enough that we have a guard. We need something to hold the valves in place, right? So they basically act like a thread or a rope that controls or holds the valves intact when circulation happens, when there is blood filled in the ventricles and the valve is supposed to be closed. In order to ensure the valves are closed and in place, chordae tendineae have to play a vital role. In fact, the muscles that you see here, these shapes that you see here are called the papillary muscles of the heart. Okay, so the chordae tendineae are in fact connected between the valve, the tricuspid valve and the papillary muscles, and on this side, the bicuspid valve and the papillary muscles. Clear, children? That is what the function of chordae tendineae is. Okay, very, very important. Now have a look at it and then we'll proceed to the next one. And we are done with the major part of the structure of the heart. I found this diagram to be very nice and easy to understand. In case any of you wants to have a look at this and draw it, you can look at it and copy it down. In case you want to learn how to draw the heart, you can. I think this is a good reference image to look at, or even if it's for your reference purpose, you could draw a heart like this, draw the arrows clearly, but the arrows will make sense to you after our tomorrow's session, because we'll be discussing how the circulation pattern happens, how double circulation happens in our session tomorrow. Okay, so the arrows probably don't make sense to you now, but what does each blood vessel do? If you can make a small note of it right below the labels in your notebook, that would make your job much easier when you sit down to revise, because you don't have to sit and read through large paragraphs and sentences in your textbook on the eve of your exam. Just this one image and the structure of your heart will be clear in your mind. Okay, so I hope that helps. And yes, let's have a very, very quick and short quiz time. The first one is the opening of the right auricle into the right ventricle is guarded by, yes, tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, aortic semi-lunar valve, or the pulmonary semi-lunar valve. What is it? And yes, the answer is tricuspid valve. I think perhaps most of you go wrong between bicuspid and tricuspid. Remember, right side is tricuspid. Right auricle, tricuspid and right ventricle, RTR. And here it's left auricle, bicuspid valve and left ventricle, LBL and RTR. Okay, so if you want to recall with the image, yes, here it is the tricuspid valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle. The next one, the largest artery is called, yes, the answer is aorta. Pulmonary artery is also a major artery, but the largest one is the aorta. Superior vena cava and inferior vena cava are major veins of your body which will be entering your heart. Okay? Now, the homework question for today. Why do you think there is a separate set of blood vessels between the heart and the lungs? Now, remember I told you there's a pulmonary artery and a pulmonary vein. Right? Pulmonary artery transports blood from the heart to the lungs. Pulmonary vein carries blood from the lungs back to your heart. Why is it that the lungs are so important? What is that link between the heart and the lungs? Why can't the aorta, just like I told you, the aorta pumps blood to the rest of your body, right? Why is it that aorta cannot pump blood to the heart, to the lungs also? Why do we need a separate system? That is what my question is. Based on your understanding, based on what you think, please post your answers in the comment section or in the chat box, or send me an email with a typed text or your handwritten text or whatever works easy for you. I just want to see how your thought process has worked in understanding this. And yes, children, do not forget to download Vedantu's learning app. We do have a lot of amazing features out there. Do join our Telegram group. You can find the link right below this video. Just hit it and join us, and we can have a lot of interesting discussions out there. And most importantly, if you enjoyed this session, do remember to hit the like button right now. Do not forget to share it with any of your friends, with all your friends, so that it will help them also prepare easier for their exams. And do remember to subscribe to our channel Vedantu 9th and 10th if you have not done that yet. In the meantime, before we meet in our next session, if there's anything I can help you with, do feel free to contact me at ambika.gopalakrishnan@vedantu.com. If not, you can also post your comments in the comment section below, and I will always be happy to help. So don't miss the next session, children. We will be continuing this same topic, the structure of the human heart. We will get a little more insights into how the heart functions, how circulation functions, how double circulation happens, and all of those things in the next session. But your task is to come prepared for it with a basic understanding of what we have discussed today, so that both you and I will benefit equally from that session. Let's make it a very, very interesting and a very, very useful session, so that your exams can be much easier. So until we meet again, this is Ambika signing off, and bye-bye.